Um, Tonight's our fourth of this series, and I know I've seen a lot of familiar names, so thank you guys for your continuous coming back to these awesome mixology events. So tonight we have Zach with Street Distillers with us, and he's going to teach us two great cocktails using their Pear and their Pear gin. And before we get started, most of you guys, I'm sure, know everything and how this works, but please keep yourself muted. I have you all muted right now. It'll just keep the background noise low, and that way Zach will have enough, or will be able to talk, and everyone can hear him. So, and then if you have any questions, we encourage you to ask them. We would love to hear all your questions. And if you just want to put them in the chat, then we can see them and we can answer them. So one more thing before we get started, thank you to Davidson's and everybody who went to Davidson's and supported them to get their the products for tonight. We greatly appreciate it, and we greatly appreciate Davidson's support. So without further ado, we will send it over to Zach.
What's up, guys?
Where is he?
Can you hear me? Can you see me? I am the guy with the peach tree in the background. Hey, I see some waves right there. What's going on? Happy Friday to everybody. I hope that you all are doing well. I know that we're doing this kind of in lieu or instead of the Taste of Highlands Ranch, which according to all the research I've done, the HRCA is now somewhat open. So I know Davidson's partners with them to do a lot of events. So hopefully the next event won't be like this. It'll be in person. But I think that this is a very healthy substitution. Enough talk. Do you guys want to get started on some cocktails right now? Give me like 2 thumbs up. Nobody gave me a thumbs up, so I'm going to start. No, I'm kidding. Cool. Well, so the first drink, if you saw in the email, we're doing what's called La Jenny. So I'm going to bust out. I'm going to show you everything I have right now for this entire thing. I have it on this handy dandy cutting board right here. So I'll move my camera just a little bit. For this, you saw before that, we're highlighting the Jackelope and Jenny Pear Gin, and I'll talk about that more in a second. We've got some other liqueurs here, as well as our tools, but let's make a quick drink while we're sitting here talking. The first one, like I said, is La Jenny. It's essentially, you guys are gonna laugh, you're gonna think I'm such a hack. It's essentially a gin and soda, but with a little bit of a twist. So we are using LaCroix, and we're using Pear gin. So want to grab your cup, get a little bit of ice in here. It's just a simple, nice summer cocktail to sit down and drink with while we talk a little bit and while we learn kind of a few things about making cocktails. And hopefully by the end of today, I can leave you with a few cool recipes and a few cool tactics to impress not only yourself, but anybody that's entertaining you. And I will, just so you guys know, I have been using Zoom for quite a while. And my internet does go just slightly in and slightly out. Never disconnects though. So if there's a little bit of latency, it'll catch up on its own. But cool, let's get started, guys. So I've got my nice tumbler or glass, whichever one you guys are using. Put some ice in there, and this is the best part. We are adding 1 1/4, or yeah, 1 1/2 actually, whatever the top one is, of the Pear gin to add as the base. So a little bit about what I'm using here. The jigger is just a measuring device. I'm sure you guys are very familiar with this. This is something that every bartender must have. Every person should have in their home. Quite a nice thing. I even use this for like soup recipes and stuff like that. And it's super convenient, pouring in and out. So we have our base. We have the Pear gin. Next, we are going to add some LaCroix. Grapefruit LaCroix is preferable. Any LaCroix works just fine. Add this, and depending on how strong you want your cocktail, you can add as little or as much as you please. A little bit more ice for a hot day like it was today. A little bit less if you're just kind of chilling out. The thing with this is, because it is Pear gin, and I'll talk about this in just a second, it works exceptionally well with a lemon. Typically, gin cocktails, gin and tonics, gin and sodas and whatnot go very well with a lime, but the Pear gin works incredibly with a lemon. So we can do two things with this. We can cut it up, squeeze a little bit in there, or we can do what I like to do, or we can do both. Get our zester, or I don't know if you guys have a peel, like a potato peel, toss a little bit of this on top. What you want to do when you zest anything, and you could even use like a cheese grater with like that really fine side for cheese, gently push it over, obviously, to grate it. It's going to gather on the bottom half of this here. You kind of see right there, it's going to gather there. Holding it over the glass, you will have to do a little bit of a tap. Just a tiny bit of that over any cocktail, any appropriate cocktail. A little bit of citrus zest works well. I'm just going to scoop a little bit of this in on top. Now, like I said, if you guys want to be pretty daring with it, what we can do is cut ourselves a little bit, like a slice of the lemon off, just a quarter, squeeze it in there for just a little bit more of that citrus. So with the rind, the skin of any citrus, grapefruit, lemon, lime, orange, it's going to add that bitter quality, which is definitely a must for most people in the cocktail. It's kind of one of the big three things you're looking for in a good cocktail: balance of sweet, bitter, and a little bit of that booze. So there we go. We have Le Jenny. Now, I've given this gin to several bartenders, grade A, class A bartenders, a part of the Bartenders Guild here in Colorado, Denver in the Springs. Like, cool, make me an amazing craft cocktail with this. Let's see what you can do. 90% of them do some variant of this. It's kind of funny, right? You have this pretty craft cocktail, pretty craft spirit in Pear gin. Add soda, you have a wonderful cocktail. Give it a taste. Give me some thumbs up or some thumbs down. See what you guys. Okay, I see some mixed reviews. Stop giving me the finger. Cool, simple, easy, refreshing. I promise you, on a very hot day, this stuff goes down like cold water. It is very nice. I don't know where you are. I am in the middle of a little bit of a cloudy session right now, but we could sip this while we move along. I'll explain a little bit about Pear gin. So it's kind of a funny story, actually. Jackelope and Jenny Pear gin is the concoction of a complete accident. I mean, some of us have kids, right, and kind of understand what that is. A beautiful accident that ended up turning out quite nice. The Pear gin is our Jackelope gin, which you can see right here, my mascot, my Jackalope, and our static gin. Both available. Both of these are available at Davidson's. This is what the Jackalope gin looks like. It is actually the first legally distilled thing in the state of Colorado. We at Peachtree hold distilling license #1 for the state of Colorado. Well before a lot of the other names you've heard, the distilling scene in Colorado is absolutely pristine. There are several people doing really incredible things out there with not only gin, whiskeys. We're a big whiskey house. We do several different kinds of whiskey. Gin, we do agave spirits. We also do several more different kinds of gin. We throw this in a barrel, throw the other gin in a barrel, and just call it barrel rested gin. While we're continuing to sip, like I said earlier, I want to leave you guys with a few things that can kind of set you up for a lot of success and entertaining, a few tricks that you can utilize in not only these cocktails, but other ones. And that zesting trick is quite a nice trick. What I like to do with zest is add that more bitter quality to it, which works again with the Pear gin, in that this is what's called, it's a mixture of two different spirits. The gin that I pointed out, as well as Pear eau de vie. Can anybody raise their hand and tell me if they've heard of a spirit called eau de vie? No, not a lot of people have heard of eau de vie. It's also called, so every European country has a name for it. Eau de vie is the French term. Schnapps is the German term. Schlivovitz is the Czech term, the Eastern European term. Akavit is the Nordic term. It's essentially distilled fruit. And like I said, every European country kind of has their own take on it. So we decided to call ours Eau de Vie. Being in Palisade, Colorado, where we are based out of, we make this wonderful tall, clear glass, tall, clear bottle spirit called Eau de Vie. I don't know if many of you know this, but pears are also grown en masse in Palisade, Colorado, along with the obvious one, peaches, which we do several things with peach as well. But what it is, it's distilled fruit. So we take that fruit, that delicious pear, mash it, ferment it, essentially make like a very thick, slurry, like pear sauce, like applesauce would be, but pear sauce, and then allow it to ferment and then distill it down. Now, where the accident comes from, kind of the general process of distillation, mashing, fermenting, and distilling, is notice how clear this spirit is. And we all know gin itself is also very clear. So one day, one fateful night, well over a decade ago, we were making a nice batch of pear eau de vie, pear, which will eventually become, for a technical term, we'll put it in a barrel and it will be pear brandy. And that comes out of the still is crystal clear. So one night, it was an early morning distillation, 1 or 2 in the morning. We had a little bit of an accident adding the pear distillate into the batch of gin. And then, I mean, a small company, a tiny distillery, that's like a $40,000 mistake, adding a little bit of pear distillate to a full done, ready to go batch of gin. That would have put us under. But one of our founders, our owner, Rory, was like, well, I might as well try it, and tasted it, and it was delightful. And so we added more to taste to make pear gin. So what you're drinking is 2 distillates. It's not pear puree mixed in with gin. There's no sugar in there. It is just straight up good old fashioned distilled alcohol. We're not going to give you that sugary stuff. So, but on that note as well, how are the cocktails? I saw some middle fingers and some thumbs down. Is it shaping up a little bit for you? All right, good. Perfect. Well, so we will move right on to the next cocktail. Please keep this to your side. It will come in useful as we make this next cocktail. There's a few other steps involved. Let me organize this real quick. So I'm going to move my handy dandy cutting board in front of me. What we have here are several different things. I'll get rid of this too. We just spoke of this. All of these, if you have been here before, especially last week when Taryn from Leopold was doing something, you probably have all of these. This is essential bartending stuff. You could spend top dollar on them, get some really nice things, or kind of piece them together as you go. But everything that's made in this used in this cocktail is great for your home bar. So I have the jigger that we were talking about earlier. I have a nice mesh strainer. Now, I just got this today. I was actually using my slightly larger one that I use for noodles, but it's the same fine mesh when I was practicing with this. Whatever you prefer. And if we don't have one, I'll show you another way to make one, a way to make it without this guy. I have my juicer for some lime that we're going to use in this, as well as one of the most important things, every bar needs this, a shaker tin. And I'm a bit old school, so I use a Boston glass or a pint glass with this too. They go quite nice inside one another. So without any further ado, I will talk about the spirits and talk about the things real quick while we're still sipping on that Le Jenny. We have what's known as the chlorophyllic alcohol, the green chartreuse. You notice it is green. The bottle you have might be green. That is green not from necessarily food coloring, but because it's so botanically rich, that is literally the chlorophyll of a lot of the plants that are involved in the distillation and what's called maceration. And I could talk more about that in a second, of the actual botanicals. Also, we have Saint Germain. I know that I have smaller bottles of these. Full bottles are great. You can use them for several cocktails. In substitution for the Saint Germain, if you were here last week especially, Leopold Brothers makes a maraschino liqueur. So if you didn't opt into the Saint Germain, the maraschino liqueur in this case will do just fine. Also, a little bit of bitters. One of my favorite parts of this cocktail, and I'll show you why here in a little bit. So let's get started, guys. Oh, one more thing. A strainer, not necessary, but killer for every bartender's on your bar shelf. Always a must-have. What we will do now, I'll just move this over to the side real quick. We're going to start with probably the most difficult part of this cocktail. So does everybody have an egg? Show me your egg. If you got an egg, run to the fridge and get an egg right now. Perfect. Awesome. This is the most important part of this cocktail. Without it, we're just making kind of a normal last word. This is kind of a variation of the last word. So what we're going to do, get our shaker tin. We're not adding any ice in the shaker tin quite yet. We're just going to add the egg white. So if you've ever messed around with an egg or an egg white, it can be kind of tricky. That's why I want to do this first. So if there's a flub, we just empty it, move on to the next egg and see what's up. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to crack this guy on the shaker tin. Actually, it's quite nice and sharp. So give it a crack, hang it over there, and I'm going to tilt the egg inside while trying to separate it. Trying to separate it right in half. You notice there's some egg white dripping out. That is exactly what we want. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to use this as a catch to catch the yolk, and we're just going to toss it back and forth to make sure we get that egg white out of there. This is a pretty important part of the cocktail, like I said, because it's what technically qualifies it as a what's called a fizz. If you do a fizz of a lot of white spirit cocktails. So give it a few tosses back and forth. You'll see some of that egg white falling out. Anybody's baked before, this is super simple. I've seen people do this with one hand. I'm not one of those people. Cool, got enough. And if you don't have an egg and you're just using some egg whites, like you buy in a small carton, it's about 3/4 to 1 ounce of egg white. So I'll put this, my spent egg yolk, over here. It stands up okay. Right here. All right, so we have that. Now we're going to start building the cocktail. Yeah, some good egg white in there. Let's start building cocktail. This is a very simple equal parts of all 3 of these spirits. First, we're going to add the gin, 3/4 of an ounce of gin. So that is the smaller side of your jigger. If you notice, if you have one like this, it can be very deceiving. You want to go to if there's lines on the inside here, you want to go to the one that's obviously second to the top. So I'm going to 3/4 ounce this of the Jackelope and Jenny Pear Gin. We're going to move on to the green chartreuse now. When you open this, I'm sure you probably have already, give it a good smell. It is delightful. Very rich, very herbaceous. It's at 3/4 of this as well. Kind of a good technique I like to do, especially if I'm pouring full pours of this. Is keep it over that. If there's a little bit of pour over, just goes right into the tin. Not a big deal at all. Give that a close. Let's go to the Saint Germain or cherry or maraschino liqueur, I should say. I chose Saint Germain because it's a cool variant. Give it a smell too. This is actually what's going to add that sweeter component to the cocktail. Remember I said a good amount of booze, good amount of bitter, good amount of sweet. So we have the bitter in the chartreuse and the sweet in the Saint Germain or the maraschino liqueur. 3/4 an ounce of the Saint Germain. All right, so this is what's important. Notice that we don't have any ice in this tin yet. And if there is ice in there, get it out. Because we have to do what's called a dry shake. So I'm going to shake it. Like I said, I like to use a pint glass for my shaker. Some just have like a metal top you just put on. We are going to shake this. If you do have a pint glass, give it a good jam in there. I like to twist it a little bit. This way, counterclockwise, I'm right-handed. Give it a good hit. And we're gonna shake this. Shake this for 1.5 minutes. So that's kind of what you need to do. And I'm a little loose here. That's what you need to do in order to make a, what's called, like I said, a fizz. What we're doing is we're utilizing the egg whites We're going to make it nice and cloudy. We're going to make it nice and frothy. So it's the same kind of concept as one would use when they are baking. I have a little bit of a leak here. So instead of using like when you're baking, like instead of mixing it with any tools, we're just giving it a shake. Really, the ideal way to do this is with a shaker. I've tried stirring this before, but it's like I said, it's like baking. You have to stir it for a very long time. Oh man, it's going everywhere. I'm getting soaking wet. All right, since I'm getting soaking wet, I'm losing a lot of volume here. Let's see. But, just check. Oh yeah, cool. So what we have here, you can kind of tell where we're at by its cloudiness. Next, what I'm going to do is I'm going to crack that guy open. Now, what we're going to do is essentially just add our ice and do the same exact thing. Making a fizz out of anything, utilizing an egg white. I've seen whiskey cocktails that have egg whites. Like I said, it just adds that extra kind of little frothiness, thickness that a lot of people enjoy. The last word, whiskey sour, try it with a whiskey sour. It works great. I'm going to give this a wipe real quick. I don't know why it was leaking. Looks like I'm not alone in the leak. I see some people laughing pretty hard. So we added our ice. Let's give it another shake for just a little bit. If you've done this class before, if you've done any of these before, what we're looking for when we're doing shaking is a nice kind of frosted sheen on the tin itself. So just take a little bit, not too long, a lot less time than rocking the actual egg white itself. A skilled bartender kind of knows the exact temperature just from how they're feeling it on their pinky and other finger. So I can socialize. A part of being a great bartender is being able to banter back and forth while you're zeroed in on making a cocktail that, you know, has several steps involved. So I'm chilled. I'm good. What we're going to do now, crack this guy open. If you haven't opened it, hit it real hard like this. Some people like to use a counter. Bad bar etiquette, but I'm kind of used to it. Get all that stuff out of there. So this is another thing. We are going to get our other tumbler or whatever glass you prefer. We're going to add ice in here. We're not going to put the ice from this cocktail, from this tin, in the actual tumbler or glass itself. This is going to have its own separate little piece of ice. This is where the strainer comes in. Now, what I like to do, the strainer is essentially just going to give me a nice, crisp, pure kind of feel to it. I like to, looks like I see some people doing a pretty good job of this. You can use this if you don't have a strainer. Just a little bit comes out of the bottom there. Like I said, it kind of keeps the ice in there. Or you can use your cocktail strainer. Just goes right on easy. So I'm going to strain this, give me a nice, pure, frothy cocktail. You can kind of see I have a little bit in there. I like to give this a shake because it is frothy. There's some thickness in there, and that's exactly what we're going for. Give this a shake too. So what we did, we got the proper amount of frothiness. If you look at your cup, you can see it's pretty nice and even froth. Without the micro strainer, it'd be a little bit more bubbly and kind of not nice. You can do this, by the way. I like to do it with ice. You can do this just in the martini glass sans ice. I recommend drinking that one pretty quick though. But what we're looking at here, I have a nice layer of that froth right there. That layer of froth will increase with the more dry shaking you do, the more battering of that egg white, if you will. All right. Yep. Smells delicious. All right, so one of my favorite parts, we're going to do the garnish next. Like I said earlier, is actually the addition of the bitters. Now, this works really well if it's in a martini glass and a tumbler. It works pretty well too. What I like to do is just do one tiny drop on the north side, on the side furthest from you, one tiny drop on the south side, west side, and east side. What that does, you notice it kind of creates a cool like pink texture. What you can do, especially if you have this in a martini glass, is kind of do a cool pattern or design with it, just so it looks cool. Another nice trick about kind of anything frothed or fizzed, the bitters, instead of going into the shaker, go onto the top of the actual froth. I like to do some like cool designs. Like I have 3 ice cubes in here. I'm just making a dope face out of it. Cranky face. Coronavirus face. And, oh, yes, let's do the garnish, other part of the garnish. We're almost ready to drink. I have a lime right here. What we can do with this is do the same thing we did with the lemon. We are quartering it. Or I guess if you would prefer, if you're not really a lime person, you can do these nice little fine slivers. It's kind of like your lemonade. Cut it down the middle. And boom. We have a delightful pear gin fizz. Give it a sip. Did anybody utilize maraschino liqueur with this? It's wonderful. That's kind of the typical way of making a last word. I really do enjoy the aspect of the Saint Germain, though. Kind of adds it a little bit more like of that gingery sweetness that I enjoy. But for a side note, so we kind of a few things, a few tricks, if you will, that I want to impart upon you. One is the utilization of an egg white. Definitely helps with that fizz, makes it look really nice, really cloudy. The second thing is with this peeler here. We have a peeler and a lighter. This is just a variant. I like to do this because the more flair you could use to entertain your guests or anything like that, the better. I'm just going to peel a little bit of this lemon or lime. So I've got just a thin sliver of the peel itself. Kind of looks like Mickey Mouse, actually. It's pretty cool. Lighter, what we're going to do is use the oils in the actual peel. This is what gives us that bitter feel like I was talking about earlier. The oils in the rind of citrus are where the bitterness comes from. If you were to squeeze this and look over your glass, you could kind of see a little bit of spritz, just a tiny bit of spritz off of it. You could do that in and of itself. It goes wonderfully as a kind of a topper. An old fashioned would use this, or I'm sorry, Manhattan, well, probably both, use this as a topper. Just that little squeeze of that citrus tops the glass. What I'm going to do, use my lighter, and depends on the thickness of your rind. Oranges are amazing at this. Limes are a little bit more difficult. But I'm looking to caramelize that little zesty mist on this. Let's see if it works. And you'll definitely know when it works. Carefully, and with things flame in mind, hold this over the glass. I'm going to squeeze the actual lemon rind over the flame. You kind of see it. Sometimes, though, especially with an orange, it gets like, whoosh, looks really cool. Let me see if I could do a better one for you. Yeah, a little bit of sparks. Just caramelize those oils on here. Put that on top of the glass. Another cool bartender trick is with that squeezed rind, wipe it all over the top of the glass. So each sip, you kind of get a little bit of that caramelized or just zest anyways. And the trick I learned in the bartending biz is if you wipe it all over the glass, clear glass, of course, that means that customer or that person, every time they take a sip, and say they're putting their hand right here, they smell the cocktail. They smell that essence of the zest itself, which is kind of a cool little trick. But guys, those are 2 great cocktails, easy summertime cocktails that you can make, entertaining, make for yourself, especially that late Jenny. I encourage you to explore any more LaCroix or any kind of like bubbly things you would like in the pear gin itself. This is more of a classic take. Like I said, I've given this spirit to several bartenders, and some of the best they can do was make a really dope kind of gin and soda with it. So Guys, that is all I have for you right now. Let's move on to some questions. I see we have some questions. Danielle, do you want to facilitate that, or should I just kind of read from here?
It's whatever works best for you. So far, I saw one from Chad. He had the barreled one. Is that going to make a huge difference in his cocktails, or?
Yeah, that's a good question. The barreled one will make some difference in the cocktail. It'll give it more of a kind of a verbose background to it. You still get all the essential botanicals from the gin, especially the pear from the pear ODB, from the pear spirit. So aged or not, it will just add kind of a different dynamic. I think both are totally fine for making cocktails. The caveat is it's aged, which is kind of a turnoff to people in the summertime for whatever reason, you know. But that's a great question. What else do we got? Yes, okay, there was a question from Amber. Yes, those 4 drops were the bitters. You can add those in with the rest of the spirits when you're making it, but like I said, for a fizz, I always like to add it last. Kind of, you can do some cool stuff on the top of the actual froth as well. Cool.
Does anybody have any other questions about their distillery, about the drinks, anything?
Hey, Danielle, I have a question. Zach?
Yeah.
So do you guys still sell Jackelope and Jenny with a pear in the bottle?
That's a great question. We've never sold Jackelope and Jenny with the pear in the bottle. That is the pear brandy has the pear in the bottle. And yes, we do sell that. I'm sorry?
So I didn't realize it was brandy. Is that what it was?
Yeah, it is a brandy. But don't let the brandy word fool you. Like I said, we just had a little bit of brandy in this gin. When people kind of think brandy, and this is kind of a good overarching concept, living in Palisade, I don't live there, but I lived over there for several years. The fruit in general kind of gets a bad rap when it's in spirits. You think sweet, sugary, like kind of the first thing that comes to most people's head when we talk about brandy, or cognac or Armagnac or things like that is kind of that sweet thing that, you know, generations past would drink. Not necessarily true. Brandy is just the distillate of fruit. Remember, like I said, everything comes out of that still crystal clear, like this wonderful pear eau de vie, immature pear brandy. Kind of classically, what a brandy is and what is in this gin here is just that fruit distilled down. That pear brandy that you're talking about will be oak aged in French oak to create the color, a little bit of darkness to it. It is wonderful. I think if we're continuing to do this kind of stuff in the fall, which I hope not, but hey, this is actually a pretty cool medium just in general, with or without social distancing. I think a good education on brandy would be quite nice because it is one of my favorite spirits. And like I said, I am an evangelist of brandy, being from living in Palisade for a while. Good question, though. What other questions do we have? I got a few here.
There's one from Gary that's, what's a good substitute for the green chartreuse?
Being part and parcel to the actual cocktail itself, the last word. Let's kind of go with what we were talking about earlier. So good amount of booze, good amount of sweet, good amount of bitter. The chartreuse kind of gives it a little bit more of that bitterness, as well as adding a lot of herbal notes, herbaceous notes to it. So if you have a spirit, a go-to spirit that has A, alcohol, obviously spirit, B, a good amount of bitterness, that would be fine. First off my head, which is kind of funny because it's also green, would be absinthe. It's really hit or miss. Making cocktails with absinthe is kind of have to be careful because every absinthe is so different. There are some that I love and some that I truly loathe that I cannot get on board with. If you have a go-to absinthe, that's something I'd recommend as well. If you're not into the kind of levity of the herbs in here, if you want something less herbal or herbaceous, chartreuse comes in yellow, now in yellow as well. It's a little bit more down the straight line of the more like kind of bitterness aspect that we're looking for in the cocktail. But affordability wise, Chartreuse isn't necessarily the most affordable thing. Absinthe, however, is. And absinthe may, depending on which kind you get, will add a little bit of that sweet note as well. So that's why I do have to be a little bit careful. But that's a great question. I appreciate those kind of questions.
And then another question was, do you have any good suggestions for a peach-based cocktail?
Yes. So let me clarify if you just from peach, because we are Peach Street Distillers, we don't really add peach into anything that we do. We don't do peach bourbon. We don't do peach anything. We don't do peach gin. We just do pear gin. So I will play to my strength and talk about the peach brandy that we make, which Davidson's also has. I think you guys cruise through it down there. It's quite nice. A lot of brandy drinkers down there. Is what's called a sidecar, the peach brandy with a sidecar. So imagine what we just did here with half or double the portion of booze, of brandy, with a little bit of citrus, lime in particular, and even that's something you could even do a fizz with as well. Add a nice egg white. I can't recall the actual proportions off the top of my head. I know it's a good amount of the brandy, but what you're using for peaches, especially in spirits, you could buy a peach flavored thing or a peach distilled thing. We do the more peach distilled things. So I hope that's helpful. Any brandy cocktail with peach, yeah, cool. I'm glad. Any brandy thing with peach, the sidecar is a great way to go. If you have a cool whiskey cocktail that you like to make, I recommend substituting the peach brandy because it is dark. It's quite nice. So, oh yeah, you're stoked on that. Why don't you chime in? Please unmute yourself, Rachel Fitzpatrick. I want to hear what you have interested.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. We're big whiskey drinkers, and we love Palisade peaches. Hopefully, we'll be able to get our hands on some this year. And so I was just thinking, maybe you had some ideas of something that we could do with that.
Oh yeah, like I said, I'm an evangelist for brandy. Brandy gets a bad rap, but it's so dark and beautiful. If you add that, substitute that with any a classic old fashioned, and kind of see how you like it. So you can modify the portions, but that is definitely what I recommend. That's a great question. Yeah, I'm glad you guys got some.
So yeah,
well, please pick some up. It's delightful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Sure. Of course. All right, I have a question here. I'm just going down the line as well, Danielle. What is the alcohol percentage of the eau de vie? Marianne, I will answer your question. I'm not sure I know I will answer it. I'm not sure which direction you're going. The percentage of alcohol of the eau de vie is 40% ABV, 80 proof. But the percentage of the eau de vie in the gin that we mix is 30% eau de vie to 70% gin creates the pear gin. That covers it, I think. And like I said, it was a delightful accident. Imagine being the dude that's working late at night for a small distillery back in the day, and you dump a little bit of pear into a huge batch of gin. I don't even know that guy. That must have been a horrifying night for that guy. I do know our owner was like, well, why don't you just give it a try? And it ended up being pretty cool. So, Marianne, if that doesn't answer your question, please type it again. Hey, thanks. Thanks, iPad 2. I'm doing a great job, bro. Cool, thanks. Well, guys, hey, if there's no more questions, I will leave you guys to sip. Please check out peachstreetdistillers.com. We have tons of merch there. Please, when things lighten up, Mesa County is open for business now, which is great. I think Denver's catching up in lieu of these painfully awkward times. But we are open. We are doing full service on our patio within regulations and being safe, of course. It is a great place to visit. Fruit and wine everywhere. Palisade is one of the best kept secrets in Denver. Because I'm from here and nobody here lives here, so they don't know about Palisade. So fruit and wine country, we do tours when this loosens up a little bit, we'll be able to do tours. In the fall, it's a great time to go. It does get very hot there in the summertime. I'd like to go during the shoulder seasons, during the spring and the fall, because it is sweltering hot. We actually just released a single barrel bourbon with Davidson's. The crew at Davidson's picked it out, so it is theirs, and it is called Boatworks. and it is on their bourbon shelf. Just ask anybody in the spirit section. And it is, we've done several single barrels. It is one of my favorites. The crew at Davidson always has the best palate. They blow me away with some of the whiskey that they select, not of mine, but of everybody else's too. So, but if that's all, guys, it's been real with you guys. And thank you, Davidson's. I think Davidson's is one of the best liquor stores in town. I live on the north side of town. When I have my wits about me, I go down there to get booze. So thank you so much to Davidson's. Thank you to Rebecca Brown for being creative with this, and Danielle for doing such a professional job at organizing this. This has truly been wonderful. And hey, I hope you've enjoyed the cocktails. So Danielle, I'll give it off to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We'll just do the final thank yous real quick. So this was the last one of the series. However, we did decide to extend the series into June for those of you who did really enjoy this. So our first one for the next series will be, we're going to switch it to Thursdays, and we'll start it at 6 p.m. So it'll be next Thursday, the 4th, and it'll be with Screwball Whiskey, which is the peanut butter whiskey. So that'll be a fun one. They're doing 2 fun different cocktails. So for those of you who like to experiment with fun things, that will be a great one for you guys to check out. So we hope to see you guys back for that. And special thank you to both Davidson's and especially to Zach. Thank you so much for being with us tonight. You did an amazing job, and we really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to teach us these cocktails. So thank you. Have a great night, everybody.